All right, so last week we got to setting up some of our sheets for our studio project, and we certainly have a few bits of piece of information here. We have a site plan, we have a floor plan, and we also did create this 3D section. And so I'm going to build on that and show you just a few modeling techniques that can potentially help you model some things. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is piers. And so we have our building here, and I think the idea behind this studio project is we want to make sure we touch the property, the building, the site as little as possible. And so we want to create the illusion that there's screw piles here holding up the building. And you probably can find a screw pile family online. But what I like to use for a lot of our projects is I go to insert load Autodesk family. And I'm just going to switch my region to be US Imperial. And I'm going to go down to columns here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to place a round HSS column. And typically the column part of a screw pile is the actual column. Is this round column. So I'm going to grab this round column and let's load it in. It's going to ask me what size I want to load. I'm probably going to pick a few different sizes by using the control button. So I'm going to pick maybe 3.5 by 0.25, 4 by 0.25, 5 by 0.25. And I think that'll be a good few examples. And so with these columns, when we're placing them, I'm going to place three on each side basically, and then one in the middle, or I guess 9 total. So I'm going to click my column here, and now you can see we have our round HSS set up here. Let's start with 5-inch, and I'm not going to be too accurate at how I place these. And the first thing you're also going to notice is up here we have our columns set to depth. And what that means and why that's important is when you start placing your columns, they're going to place below your view. And so you're not going to see them. We want them to place above your view. We talked a little bit about this a few weeks ago in the final, but I'm just going to show you it again. So we're going to start off by placing them on height and changing the height to be the roof. And that way when we place them, we can see them. So I'm going to place one right here, one in the middle here, one in the middle here. And we're going to do one halfway down, one in the center here, and one in the center there. And I'm placing these columns in this view like this just so I can see them. And then once we adjust them, it'll make a little more sense. So let's go to our 3D and let's just see what those columns look like. So I'm just going to tab. I'm going to hover over a wall and hit tab, which is going to allow me to select all my walls. And I'm going to hit HH on the keyboard, which is going to hide them. And so now you can see our 9 columns. And another little tip is if you want to rotate around an object, if you click that object, it allows you to rotate around it. So that's kind of a little hack to make it a little bit easier to see things. We're going to select all 9 columns. And we're going to change our bottom constraint. Let's just make it -10. How deep it goes, typically we have a 4-foot frost depth, but usually screw piles go to a depth that they have bearing strength. So they have a pressure gauge attached to them, and they're looking for a certain pressure resistance to the screw going into the ground. And so I'm just going to go -10, and then we're going to change our top constraint to be level 1. And so now you can see our columns are kind of going down into the ground. And I'm just going to lower my base constraint a little bit more, or sorry, my top constraint a little bit more, because the screw piles are not going to the top of the floor, they're probably going to the bottom of the floor. So I'm just going to set this as -1, so just 1 foot below. And so now our screw piles are kind of going below there. So that's kind of the first little tip I have. And I think when you look at this 3D section that we created last week, now when you look at it and you see those columns, it actually looks a little bit better. It looks like the building's sitting on something and it's being supported. So that's how we want to start creating the screw piles. Right now, we're kind of interacting with them in 3D view. If we were to go up to our View tab and we go to Plan Views here, and there's another tab called Structural Plans. And so if we open and create our structural plans, we should be able to see our columns in our structural plan 1. And if we don't, there's a few things we can do. First is lowering the view range. So let's lower our view range down. So we're down to -4, and our cut is 1. So I think that's fine. I'm going to do one other thing. I'm going to go to VG, and I'm going to go down to our floors, and we're going to select our floors, and we're going to go down to our walls. And I'm holding the control button on the keyboard to select both those. We're going to make both of these 100% transparent. And what this is going to do is it's going to allow us to see those columns kind of in this view. So not really necessary to actually prepare this view, but I think it sometimes helps to move things around. So that's kind of the first little tip I want to give you. So we have our columns placed. The next little thing is, I know a lot of you want to start doing some interesting roofs. And so with a roof design, there's a few different things we can do. So, and I might just move over to the side here. And so if we click a new roof here, and we click OK, and so there's a few different roof types here. I think the first thing we can do is making sure we select a roof thickness and type that's emblematic of what we're trying to do. So if we want a flat roof, we probably want to pick this steel truss on EPDM. We're gonna duplicate this though, because I'm gonna call this. I'm gonna change the name of this. Let's call this flat roof. Wood structure, and then we have insulation on. Insulation with EPDM. So we're just going to adjust this to be a little bit more of a residential construction kind of detail. So we've got our rigid insulation, our metal decking, which we'll delete. We're going to insert a substrate of plywood. Plywood sheeting. Make our plywood sheeting. Let's make it 5/8 of an inch. And then our structure will be our wood joist layer. So let's go structure wood joist rafter layer. We can add it with bad insulation. And we'll make this 11 1/4 inches, which is a 2x12. So we'll make this 11 1/4. And just a little tip here, I probably said this before, but for feet and inches, you can do 0 space the number. So the 0 would be the feet, 11 1/4 would be the inches. So it's a quick way of doing feet and inches. If you are working in metric, you could just type in 11.25 and use the inch symbol, the quotation symbol for inches, and it'll automatically convert that into metric. So that's the one great thing with Revit. It kind of goes back and forth.
Will they actually allow it? Because in AutoCAD, they don't really show it.
And Revit in some respects is real units.
Okay.
And so whether you're working in metric or imperial, it doesn't really matter. Revit will do that conversion for you. So, yeah, so now we have some just basic layers here. We're going to click OK, and I'm just going to draw a bit of a box here for a second. Let's make it not that big. Something like that. And so our first roof we have is this hip roof. The hip roof is probably better done as this wood rafter roof type here. Let's copy this to the side here. So that's a hip roof. The hip roof has the slope on all 4 sides. If we select 2 of them and turn that off, we have our gable roof. So gable roof, another very common type of roof. If we copy that over again, we can do a flat roof. Or actually, let's just do one more in between. So we have our monoslope roof, like this. Monoslope, shed roof, any of that kind of stuff, that language works. Typically monoslope, I usually keep around a 212 or 112, so kind of looks something like that. Let me just do my little tip there, select that object to spin around it. And then we have our flat roof. And our flat roof, let's click our edit footprint, and we're going to turn off our slope here. And so our flat roofs are never flat, and we talked about that before, but what we want to do is go to edit type here, and we want to make sure our insulation layer, let's actually just change this to be our other roof type here, flat roof. And we want to make sure our insulation layer has this variable command. And so what we can do with the insulation layer is we can actually just slope the insulation. And so our maximum slope is 5 inches because that's the thickness of the insulation. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go and click this flat roof, and I'm going to click the modify sub-element, and I'm going to grab a point and just place it in the middle somewhere. And I'm going to grab this point and I'm going to go to -5 inches. And it's a little tough to see, but this roof now does have a bit of a slope in it. So that's one way to do it. If I were to turn off that variable layer, it's going to slope the whole roof, so including the structure. So you can see how the bottom now actually is sloped down. So that's something you want to turn on and off. Like if you're using a flat roof, you probably want to have it on. But if you're using the next type of roof I'm about to show you, let's just copy this over. I'm going to turn on the variable for this one. And for this one, let's change the roof type. So we're going to go with this 8-inch rafter, and let's duplicate it, and let's call this. You know what? Actually, let's go back to this one here. We're going to go to this one, and let's duplicate it, and let's call this EPDM green roof. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to turn off the variable. We're going to insert. And we're going to add a finish of grass, or we're going to add two finishes actually. We're going to add a finish of dirt, and then we're going to add a finish of like a grass or vegetation layer. So let's go grass. There's actually probably one more layer we need to add in. So let's add the grass, and actually I should put that up. So the grass would be maybe 2 inches. And let's insert one more layer. So on top of the EPDM, we do a protection board. Let's see if it has a protection board. Let's just put it under sheathing. No. Roof. I'm going to put it under a roof rubber black. It doesn't really matter what we put it under, but I think typically a protection board is some sort of rubber material. So let's put a protection board, and this would just be a 1/2 inch, or actually maybe not a rubber material. This could be a drainage plane actually. So protection board might be under the EPDM, and then this would be like a drainage board. And then on top of here we'd have the earth, and so we'd do maybe 4 inches of earth. And I'm going to show you another tip to maybe kind of help you even further beyond trying to randomly create these layers. So this one's got to be, so these have to be finish. Like that. And so now we have this wonderful green, it's actually green, roof. But I'm going to go here, I'm going to go to modify sub-elements, and I'm going to delete my point here. And I just want to show you some kind of funky roof types. So when we have a flat roof like this, we can start to make some changes with the roof and the slope without providing a slope. And why I'm saying that is I know some of you want to do some different roof types. And so this is kind of a really easy way to hack it. So we could raise up this point like that. So we have a roof like that now. We could, let me just copy this over. And let's just go to our point here and let's set this back down to 0. One thing we could do is we could have a split line, and this is something, Max, that might help you on yours. So we can raise up the side, so raise this up 3 feet and raise this up 3 feet. So you could have something like that, so you have a bit of a butterfly. But to take your roof one step further, what you could do, so I've raised these up and we have this kind of V shape, but I want the V to also slope so that water doesn't just sit in the bottom of the trough. Typically, you could slope just the bottom, but what we could do is actually slope the whole roof itself. And so this one is 3, so let's make this 5. This one is 0, so let's make this 2. So we're basically just lifting this whole section up 2 feet. And so now we have a butterfly that also is sloped. And right now I have this as a green roof. We could do this one in steel. So let's maybe go back to our 8-inch rafter one. And let's go here. And let's duplicate this. And let's call this insulated. And I'm going to change this to be also 12 inches. Steel. And make that 12. I would say a 12-inch roof is a pretty safe place to have a roof. We just need to change the joist layer to be 11 1/4. And we need to change our asphalt shingles to be steel. There was a standing seam. Standing. Oh, standing seam roof is down here. Use the arrow key to move it up and use that roof. And so now that is a steel roof. I'm going to take that one step further. I'm going to show you a little bit of a hack. And so typically with a standing seam roof, you'll have ribs. And this is a really cool technique because I think it applies to a lot of stuff. And I think this is more of an advanced technique. And it's more of a rendering technique than anything. But what I will do with a roof is I'm going to grab this exact roof we just created. And I'm gonna copy it up 2 feet or 5 feet, doesn't really matter. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna change this roof to be a curtain wall. And it doesn't like the shape. This might be, I might have to actually do this in a simpler roof. I don't know if, no, let's see. I'm just gonna change this to be our slope glazing. Let's duplicate. We're gonna call this standing seam. So I'm going to have interior mullion types. Let's just do the 1-inch square. We only want one grid. So let's just see. And I think what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to do, actually it might not work on this type of roof. It will work on just a normal simple roof. So let's just, this doesn't really help you, Max, very much, but I'll show it to you anyways. Let's just copy this roof over. So with this roof, we can copy this roof up. Let me just go to the side view here, or back view. So let's copy this roof up. And I like to do this a lot, again, for rendering. We want to change our grid 1 layout. This might have to be grid 2. So let's do fixed distance, usually around 16 inches. So 1 foot 4 or 1 foot, 16 to 18 inches, I guess. And so now we have these ribs here. And so the thing with curtain panels is we can't just say no panel. Because when it doesn't have a panel, it's just going to assume there is one. We actually have to change our curtain panel to be empty. And when it's empty, it will have nothing. And so once we do that, we now have these like ribs we can start to use to show our standing seam roof. And it actually looks a ton better. So now the last step is just grabbing this and lowering it down on top of our roof. There is a way to do this on the roof that you created, Max, but it's actually a little bit more involved. But you can see that actually looks like a standing seam roof now. It like has texture to it. So that's a cool little technique. So that's a few things you can do with roofs. Hopefully that helps everybody. I kind of encourage you to have some sort of an overhang. I think overhangs make roofs a little bit more interesting. But I'm going to show you maybe one other roof type that hopefully will help. So let's select these walls. We're going to change these walls to be going up to our roof. And we're going to use the roof tool, and we're going to place a roof on the roof plane, and we're going to change this to be our our steel roof here. And I'm going to use the pick wall button, and I'm going to set a fairly large overhang of 4 feet. So let's set that. We're going to pick all of our different walls here. And we're going to use the flip button to flip this to the exterior. And we're going to turn off, actually let's do it this way. I'm doing this mainly for that 3D section we created. So we're going to turn off define slope. We're going to do a 212 pitch. And so now our roof is going to look like this. And so if we go back to our 3D section, we kind of have this more interesting kind of section with the roof there. We can go back to our 3D, we can select all of our walls, and we can go to attach top to base. And so again, now that we go to our 3D section, we have this kind of really nice roof gesture in that 3D section. So 2 other things I'm just going to show you with roofs that might help quite a bit. One is a lot of you are probably going to have solar panels. You certainly can go online and get some solar panels. So if we go here to BIM objects, we can download solar panels. But sometimes what I will do is I will just model them. So we got solar panels here. So there's a few different types of solar panels. So you can technically insert those if you want. But what I'll often do is I'll model them. And what I'll do with modeling is I'm just going to copy this roof up like maybe a foot. And what I'll do is basically break this up into squares. And so maybe we'll have, let's click this pick line button. Let's offset by a foot. And we're just going to offset these lines in. And we'll draw this over here. Promise this will make sense. And the one reason why I like to show people this is I think it gives you some more customization. So this will be that 212. And so now when we look in our 3D section, we kind of have this piece sticking up here. So instead of downloading a model for your solar panels, you could certainly model them like this. And then I would just take this to be a thinner roof system. So often I will build one. I'll just use like aluminum and then some rubber and then some glass, and I'll just kind of create those 3 layers to create the roof or to create the solar panel. So that's something that you can do for your studio projects that can help you maybe emulate some features. So solar panels that way.
You can also load them on Autodesk Family, right?
Yeah, you can download stuff as well, but I find this is a little bit more customizable, so you can kind of really have more control over the angle and how they're placed. And so that's one thing you can do.
Right, because honestly, I don't know what that shape looks like in a 3D view.
Yeah, it's basically just a roof that hovers above the other roof. Yeah, so it looks like that. So the last thing I want to show you, just because I know we talked about doing the screw piles, but I know some of you are going to maybe want to have some exposed structure in your building. And so there's a few things you can do. One is, let's go to our roof plan, and maybe you want to have a larger covered area on one side of your building. So let's maybe make that out like that. And what we can do here is we can go to structure and we can go to beam. And right now I think we just have this W12 loaded. So let's go to insert load Autodesk family. And we're going to go to structural framing. And again, remember I'm in my US Imperial. Doesn't really matter, but I find there's more selection for family types. We have this timber member right here. So we're going to load in this timber. And I'm going to load in all the 6s, so 6x6 to 6x24, and maybe all the 8s, 10s, and 12s. So let's maybe just load in all those types. Again, using the control or the shift button on my keyboard to do that. I like to load in more just because then I have more options for types and I don't have to load them or change them. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to model a beam. So we're going to go to structure, beams. And again, I know this is like a little bit advanced, but I think this will probably help in your studio projects. And so now we have this beam. Let's extend it out roughly to there. And this beam itself is actually probably under the, oh, it's, yeah, okay. So it's on the underside of the roof. And so we want to lift it up. So lifting it up is not that difficult. So what I will do actually is go back to my building section we have here. And I want to physically measure so we can see that piece of lumber there. We could maybe make it a little bigger. So let's make it an 8 by 14 or something. And we're just going to grab the measuring tool and we're just going to measure from here up to here. So around 5 feet. So let's make this 5 feet up. And so that's one way. So we can change the Z offset value. So that's one way to change the height. The other way is to change both of these. So these are basically the end conditions. So we're raising one end up and then we're raising the other end up. I often like using the Z or the Z offset value just because it's a little bit easier to manipulate either side. And so now what this looks like in 3D view is we have this kind of beam going across under our roof. And I'm going to show you two more things that are, well, maybe really one, but essentially two more things that are really useful. So some of you might have this deck carry out, and so this part's pretty simple. I usually will keep this floor inside the building, and I will just model a separate floor. So let's go to our level 1 floor plan. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another floor, and we'll have it attached to this wall and attached to these walls. But then we'll just draw another number, maybe let's go 12 feet out. And we'll use the trim and extend command to connect these. And so now we have kind of our deck sitting out the side. And so you remember that we created that structural view. So I'm just going to grab the columns. And it looks like we might be missing a column. I don't know where it is. But let's just grab, I'm going to hide my topography. Let's just grab these 3 columns. And we're just going to move these out, not all the way to the edge, but a little bit from the edge. Actually, that works out well. But you want to move them out just about to the edge. And then we could just adjust this deck layer so it actually is to the outside of the wall. So I'm just going to hit tab on my keyboard using the align tool to move that out. So I'm hovering over the edge, hitting the tab button, clicking, and then moving that line out. And so now when you look at this, it looks like, okay, we've got a deck here, we've got our screw piles, and then we just need some sort of post to hold that up. And so let's go to insert load artist family, and we're going to load in a timber post or a timber column. So let's go to framing, or sorry, structural columns, and we'll find our timber. Where is timber? Timber column right there. And this I'm not going to load as many types in. I'm going to load 6 by 6, 8 by 8, 10 by 10. Maybe I'll do 12 by 12 as well.
Question: does
Yep.
the columns depend on how you want, how stable you want the structure to be?
Yeah, I mean, right now you could just say it's visual because I guess you're not that familiar with designing structure yet. So I usually stick around a 6 by 6 or an 8 by 8. I think they're nice.
Because when it comes to designing, we just don't want everything to fall apart. That's the reason.
I mean, right now for this purpose of this design exercise, it's not your main consideration. Design is your focus.
My bad.
So
Yeah, because that's something else about project 1.
yeah, so and with this, we just want to roughly kind of mock it up. So I'm just going to put these timber columns on top of these screw piles, which are hollow structural. And then you can see here we have these columns. I can now, with this column, instead of measuring, I can actually go to attach top to base, and I can attach it to the beam. And so if I lower or raise that beam, that column will go with it. So just a nice way to add some structure. add some more interest to your project. I'm going to do one more little trick, and that's doing a beam system. And so a beam system is essentially an array. So it creates a whole bunch of elements. And so I'm just going to move out into the side here to some space. And I'm going to click on structure. And under structure, I clicked that way too fast, sorry. Under structure, there's a button called beam system here. And so a beam system essentially is a series of beams, or a series of joists for that matter. So I'm just going to draw a box. And I'm going to click the check mark. And in this box over here, we have the distance, the spacing. So I can type in 2 feet. And then I can change my timber to be 6 by 16. So we have all that control right here. So that's really cool, but how do I get this timber underneath our roof? That's kind of the goal, right? We want it to look like a timber roof structure. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to delete this for a second. And we're going to go over to our building. And what I like to do for this type of system is I like to actually go to our ceiling view. So down here we have the ceiling view. And because we want to look up at the ceiling. And so that's why I'm going to the ceiling view. If you do not have a ceiling view, you can go up to view, plan views, and under plan views there is the reflected ceiling plan, and you just need to create those views from there. And so under our ceiling view, we have this. Ceiling views by default don't show structure, so I'm just going to click VG, and I'm going to turn on structural framing. And now we can see, or we should be able to see our beam going across there, which we can't. Let's change this to be our top constraint to be, let's make it unlimited in this case. And yeah, there we go. We see our beam. Our beam is just showing up in a line, but if I change my detail level to fine detail, now we see the thickness of that beam. We also see the wall layers. And again, this is not necessarily at all to do, but I just want to teach you some tricks and tips for your studio class so that you can maybe do a little bit more. Probably the roof exercise will be the most useful for most people. But with this, what we can do now is go to structure beam system. And I'm going to use the pick line button. And I'm just going to pick all the edges of my roof. Like that. And we could lock them. And we're going to set our work plane. We're going to click pick plane. And we're going to set our work plane. If it lets me, it's not letting me. All right, we'll fix that in a second. So we're going to select these lines. We might have to unlock them and lock them again, but I'll fix that in a minute. And we're going to turn off no to tag members over here. It's just going to add a whole bunch of tags, and it's just kind of annoying. We don't really need to tag them. And this right here, this triple line, that's the direction of our rafters. So that's right, we want them to go top to bottom. If we have the wrong direction, we just can click beam direction here and just click a different line, and it'll change that direction. And so let's do maybe 3 foot centers, and let's do 6 by 8. And let's click our check mark here. And so what this looks like, if we go to our 3D view, I got too many views open here. Is we have these down here. So the first thing we could do is edit our work plane and change our work plane to be the roof. But if you remember, our roof is sloped. So how do we slope a beam system? Well, we can actually instead click pick new. And what we can do is we can pick the underside of that roof face. And often what I will do is I won't really be too particular about those lines, because as you can see, it threw these lines really far off. So if we go back to our ceiling view, I'll just grab this beam system again and go to edit footprint, because we've already picked our plane. And so what I want to do is just grab these lines and move them back into place. So let's grab the corner here, which is not letting me grab. And we're just going to move this back into, and we might just be easier just to delete these and do a new pick line. And we can lock those. And we just need to change the direction to be this way. And now when we look at this, our rafters, our beams are kind of underneath there. And all we really need to do is go back to our section and just lower our beam. So again, if we change this to fine detail, we'll see the thickness. And so let's just change this to be 4'6". 4'6". And now it looks like those rafters are sitting on that beam. And I just want to show you this quickly. Typically when we change the beam, we always want to change this dot, not the other piece. What I tell people typically is these arrows are for making a 0 to 6 inch adjustment. If you're making more than a 0 to 6 inch adjustment, you always want to hit and use that dot. So the dot is like the length of the beam. So when you schedule a beam, it's going to schedule based on that dot. So typically what we would want to do is we want to make the beam longer and then adjust that dot back, or adjust the arrows back, so that if a contractor were to order off the drawings, that beam would show up as a longer beam and then they could cut it down to the size. Not that you really need to know that, but that's just what I recommend. So always change and move a beam by the dot, not by the arrows. So there we go, we've got that beam. Let's just go to our structural, or our section here. And what we're going to do, since I have that reference plane there, we're just going to copy this beam to that reference plane. And we're just going to copy it once more over to here. So this one's pretty easy. It's going to go down to 0, but we might have to adjust it just a little bit. And yeah, we do. So let's make it negative 6 inches. And then this one, we're just going to measure. So we're going to measure up from the top of roof. So let's make it 2 feet. So that's roughly 2 feet. And so now when we look at our 3D view, it looks like we have these beams supporting this. And again, we can use this attached top to base for these columns. And so we have our beams kind of supporting our roof rafters, supporting our roof. So not necessary to do all this kind of stuff in your studio class, but I think it starts to add detail and starts to add more information to make your project look better. You know, if you have some of these weird roof types that we kind of talked about before, the beam system should, unless you have this parabola one that's kind of like changing slope, it might not really work on that one. But if you just have something like this, you just do one beam system per side. So one sloping this way, one sloping that way. So yeah, so that's kind of the idea. And then just going back to our 3D section once more. Again, this just looks like there's a lot more going on. It's a lot more interesting. So,
well, for next week's submission, we can add some text on sheets when it's using Revit, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so we have this sectional perspective here. Typically, I recommend you go down here to save and lock orientation. But now we can add text. And because this is a perspective view, it's not going to allow me to add text. And I usually don't recommend doing it this way. But with sectional perspectives, because they're 3D views, it's not going to allow you to do that. But we can do it in the paper space, in the sheet.
That's what's safe.
Yeah, so if we go into our sheet space here, we can add detail lines, text. So we could say, we could do, you know, timber structure. I can't spell. Timber structure. So you can add a bunch of text sizes like that, and then when you export this view, you can export and bring that PDF into Illustrator or Photoshop, and then you can add more pictures or whatever you want to make that look a little better.
How can we create opening on this roof?
Like a skylight?
Like a skylight or?
Just a hole. Yeah, that's a good question. So I mean, creating an opening in the roof was the question, and it's honestly not that hard. I like, say for example, we grab this flat roof we have here, and I'm just going to move this over. So maybe we'll go this way. The way I like to do openings is by editing footprint. And so we can actually add a box within a box. So if I added a box in here, if I turn off these slopes, it's just going to add that hole. There is the ability to do the shafts. So there's a shaft button over here, so we can do shaft in a face, shaft in a floor, shaft in a wall, shaft in a roof. I don't like using those because I don't think they give you enough control. I prefer to create that in the footprint. But you can do something like that, and then with this roof in particular, you know, because it's a flat roof, you know, what you maybe want to do is grab this center part and raise it up 1 foot, and so you're just sloping it slightly to the edges, even though it's a flat roof. So that could be a one way to handle it. Another way would be to add some split lines across here. So maybe let me just think about this. So if we had a split line, where's my center point again? There's. We add our split line all the way across here like that. What I could do is add another one somewhere around here. And I'm just going to do the one, actually I'll do both sides, I guess. Another one right around here. Because obviously the goal with this is we want to get the water away from the skylight. So if this is a flat roof, we do something like this, and I'm just going to add one more. And down the center here. And what we do is we actually lower this point. So this would be -5, and this would be -5. So you don't have to do all those lines, but I find the lines are really helpful because they help you kind of slope and know what's going on. The only other thing we actually probably should lower is this point, actually I guess these 3 points across here. And I'm just going to lower these -3, and just so they're kind of sloping towards that point. So that's how you kind of do flat roofs and slopes and things. Any other things that anyone thinks of that they might want to do in studio that they're not sure how to do?
I was thinking about like loading family such walls, but honestly, I don't think
Walls, yeah, so that's a good question actually. Walls you can't really load per se. There is a website called BIMsmith.
Oh, right, I've
So I think I brought this up in studio. So BIMsmith is a really cool tool. They actually do have families on here, so you can actually search this for families, for solar panels, for whatever. But they have this tool called Forge Wall Builder, Forge Roof Builder, Forge Ceiling Builder, and Forge. Actually, I think that one's a floor. Floor, yeah. I said roof, but I think I meant floor. And so with this, let's maybe go to the Roof Builder. And they do have full systems here. So you can find systems that different companies have defined. So TPO is a pretty common one. So TPO is kind of like the Ferrari in roofing. So EPDM is a great roofing product, but TPO is quite a bit thicker, and they kind of weld the roof a little bit more together. So by weld, I mean like they melt the roof together. So TPO is kind of like what most high-end roofs we do for flat roofs. But you can see here there's a bunch of systems already created. And let's just see. Zip system, asphalt shingles. Let's maybe type in steel roofing. So we have these different ones here. Let's just bring in this one. And so you can see it brings in all the layers for us. And so we could use something like this. We could, it's going to actually ask me to log in, so let me just log in here for a second. So with this, we could go to we could do a new one. If we like this configuration, we can click Build My Configuration. And it might take a few minutes, but it will give you a Revit file to download. So you can see how this icon is gray right now. You just have to wait till it turns blue. And once it turns blue, you can click it and download. And this is going to open up as a project file, not as like a family, because roofs don't have families; they're projects. And so I'm just going to go to File, Open here. Let me extract this. And let me just go to my Downloads folder. And so this is a project, so we're just going to open up this project. And typically what I'll do is I'll draw the roof and then just copy that roof over. So in this case, it's actually already been drawn. So we'll just click on this roof. We're going to click up here, Copy. And we're going to copy this to my other project. So let's go to my 3D view here. And then we'll just hit Control V to paste it. When I paste a roof in, I always want to click and paste it. And then I'll hit Escape, and then we can click Delete. And then I'll just grab this standing seam roof here that we did earlier, and we can change this to be our new roof type. And what we want to do is just raise our mullions so we can see our mullions here. So this is a curtain wall system. We'll click Raise. And with the curtain walls too, you can see how they're kind of offset. If you just change this to be center, they should line up like that. So that's a pretty cool way to bring in and create wall types and floor types and roof types. It takes a little bit of the guesswork out of it, especially since you're kind of just learning about layers and materials. I think it's a great tool to start to use to build your walls. My kind of recommendation for you is never use anything generic. So never use generic floors, never use generic walls, never use generic roofs. Always try to have a specific wall or roof type. I think that's one thing that'll differentiate you between being maybe a beginner or novice user of Revit to someone that's maybe more intermediate, is making sure that you're diligent about the walls and the roofs and the floors and make sure all that stuff's kind of set up properly. So yeah, any other questions about Studio? Okay, cool. So that's some roofs. I like to show roofs because roofs are very complicated. So maybe the last maybe two things I'll do, and then we'll switch over, is maybe we want to have some sort of glass wall system here. And I think inherently the best thing would be to use a door. But say you don't want to use a door and you want to have more glass, we can build a curtain wall here. And maybe what we do is we'll click our storefront, and we're going to place our storefront just in the middle of this wall, like that. And the cool thing about storefronts is they will override the wall that is adjacent. And so with this, we don't want it to go all the way up. So let's go here to top constraint to be our roof. And then I do want it to follow the slope. So what I can do here is click Edit Profile, and we're going to click this Pick Line button, and we're going to pick 2 feet as our offset, and I'm going to offset down from this, and I might actually just have to click it twice, delete the upper line, and essentially what we're going to do is we're going to have this curtain wall be about 2 feet down from the top of the roof, and it's going to look like that. We'll delete that mullion. And so now we have that kind of curtain wall, the big window system there. Again, I think if you can use windows are probably a little bit better. But if you have some weird kind of walls or windows that you want to create, curtain walls are a good way to do that. So again, just another kind of couple techniques to kind of improve your design. And you can see here, by having that curtain wall there, it looks pretty sharp with the windows. So let's maybe just do one more where we're cutting through with our section. So maybe, yeah, our section is right there. I'll just draw one right beside it. It's going to go a foot in actually. Like that. And let's go to our 3D section. And if we change this to be, let's change this to be our roof plane, and then maybe we'll go up 3 feet. Something like that. So it starts to make your section look a little bit better. You're starting to have more information in it. It starts to look more like a real building. So hopefully that helps. Yeah, if there's any other questions you think I should cover or anything with Studio, just let me know, and I can certainly cover those next week. But that gives you a few different things to make your project look a little bit better and more interesting, and obviously modeling. So as you kind of learn to model things and you start to design your building, if there's a clash of I want to do this, but I don't know how to model it, let me know, and I can try to help you with some solutions. Sometimes they will be more complex solutions. Sometimes they are easy. So it just depends on what you want to do. So let's pause that there.